Last night, Democrats delivered a historic resurgence and commanding victory, which many are calling a blue sweep. And here in the studio, first interview, maybe second interview after the election, we have DNC Chair Ken Martin to break it all down with us.
This is an amazing honor. My first appearance on the Blueprint with you, Hannah. I am so honored to be here today. And what a big night for Democrats. It was amazing.
What a big night. And I have a lot of questions for you that maybe I know, but maybe some of our viewers don't necessarily know. So let's dig into it with the blue sweep. So I want to list off Virginia, New Jersey, New York City, which people are tracking, but Pennsylvania Supreme Court, California Proposition, Maine, Georgia Public Service Commission. Historic sweep. We haven't really seen anything like this. The last comparison is 2018 or 2017, but nothing like these numbers. So initial read, gut check. What do you think happened?
Well, first, obviously, it was a big blue sweep throughout the country, historic for this off-year election, right? We've never seen anything like it. And you mentioned some of the big races. Of course, what I've been really interested in is digging into a lot of the swings with key constituencies, which we can get into, but also some of those real down-ballot races that we won as well. We broke the supermajority in the Mississippi state legislature, right? We made six-figure investments in those races down there, historic investments with the Mississippi Democratic Party and others on the ground there, and we broke the supermajority. In Virginia, they picked up 13 seats in their House of Delegates, right, which is, again, historic. They've never picked up that many seats in an off year. In New Jersey, we picked up 3 seats in their legislature to actually give them the supermajority in their legislature. So now Mikey Sherrill is going to have even more runway, more leeway to do what she needs to do to build the type of future that New Jerseyans lead and need. In Detroit, we elected the first African-American woman mayor. In Albany, we elected the first African-American woman mayor. In Georgia, we elected the first African-American woman to a statewide elected position. I mean, it's historic throughout this country. We're seeing big wins up and down the ballot. And this is what I talked about. And when I came in on day one, people thought I was a nut. When I said, and I might be a little nutty, right? But when people said, look, I said, when you organize everywhere, you can win anywhere. When we have a vision of actually building up and down the ballot and making those investments and truly making this party a national party, not just focused on federal power, but really working with our state and local party committees, working with those candidates up and down the ballot, making sure we're on the ground in spaces that, past DNC chairs and others haven't been to, right? Making sure we're organizing everywhere. That is the focus. And you hear me say that to this wonderful team here. And I should give a shout out to this team, because I said it last night to folks, none of us will get any of the credit for any of this, for sure. But there's no doubt when you look at these wins that the DNC was a big part of almost all of them across the board. And that's a result of you, your team, everyone else who works at this building, the wonderful team of colleagues that I get to work with who are dedicated not because they're looking for plaudits and glory and credit and thanks, but they're in this for the right reasons. They know that these elections make a difference.
That makes me feel so good. Thank you. I mean, I want to talk about kind of this role of the DNC. Yeah. You mentioned when you came in. So you came in February. You were elected DNC chair. You're from Minnesota.
The greatest state in the union.
I'm learning a lot about Minnesota over the last year. But can you talk a little bit about what you did in Minnesota? Because you're not a Washington guy, and in fact, no, yeah. Well, you've been traveling since you've been here. You hate it so much that you've been traveling to these places that we invested in. 33 states, I think you've been to in 6 months.
I think it's 34 now.
34?
Yeah.
I have to change my notes on that. And the investments that the DNC made are historic in these races. So this cycle, just this year, $7 million across both governor's races, the state Supreme Court races in Pennsylvania, Prop 50, Mississippi State Legislature, all of these places. Tell me a little bit about what you learned in Minnesota and why making these investments in a historic way was important for the DNC to do now.
I mean, at the end of the day, I've always taken a pretty wide approach, big approach on how you actually build a party, right? As I've said, you win through addition, not through subtraction. You win by building as big of a coalition as possible, and that means making investments throughout the state, building the type of party that brings people into the conversation where they feel, despite their opinions and ideas, and in fact, I would say as a result of their different opinions and ideas, they are welcome into the party. And that sort of welcoming culture has created a party where people, work together, that they know and understand that we're a coalition, and what matters is building power everywhere in the state so we can actually get things done for people. When I was chair, we didn't lose a single statewide election, but as importantly as that, we now held the governor's ship in Minnesota for the longest period ever in our state's history, 16 years. By the time Governor Walz is done, actually we'll add another 4 years because he's running for re-election and he'll win next year. But in addition to that, we won 2 trifectas where we're actually able to get things done for people. And I think this is the key. We can take some credit, of course, for elections, but what really helps us is when we elect people who actually then get shit done for people, who use the power that they have to make a big difference. I think that's the secret to Minnesota. It's just you got good people running for office who, really believe in the power of elected service. So
that's
but
where we should be, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I don't know if that's where you're going with the question, but let me just say this. I'm really proud of Minnesota for sure, but we're trying to, take that model a little bit here, which is, again, let's organize everywhere. Let's invest in year-round organizing. Let's have conversations with voters early and often, so we're not just having a transactional relationship with voters, but we're building a real relationships with voters around trust, around shared values, around their hopes and dreams. Let's bring people into the conversation, and let's realize and recognize as a coalition that everyone's welcome and invited. That's how I led, I think, and that's the beauty of the DFL, and that's certainly now the beauty of the DNC is we are a big tent party that's going to compete everywhere. We're not going to just show up and ask for people's votes 3 months before an election.
Yeah, and I think there's a stat about some of the earliest investments this cycle. So for these elections that we saw yesterday, and obviously, as you said, I think our candidates in those campaigns ran amazing campaigns, but the DNC is right there, lockstep to support them.
That's right.
You mentioned talking about this idea of what it means to be a Democrat and talking to people, bringing people in. I would love for you to talk about what a big tent means, because what I saw last night, I think what we're hearing is that affordability was actually something that no matter what part of the tent you fall under, people were on the same page about talking about affordability with voters. But we do have this big tent. So how do you have different types of people maybe that might consider themselves Democrats that are all focused on the same message? And what is your philosophy as a DNC chair when it comes to that big tent? Yeah,
well, first off, no one should confuse unity with unanimity within the Democratic Party. We are a big tent. And what I mean by that is, as a big tent party, we have many different ideas, many different ways to accomplish the same goals, right? And that's where we're unified. And I think if you see last night, what was remarkable, particularly in those 3 big races, but across the board as well, Zoran Mamdani in New York City and Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey and Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. Of course, they're different candidates. They represent different wings of our party, right? And they have different ideas, of course, but they were focused relentlessly on affordability, on kitchen table issues. And they had different ideas on how to bring down the cost of living for people and how to, make sure people can afford their rent and mortgage and how to actually make sure people have access to health care and jobs and education in their states and city. But the reality is they share the same goals. And that's what I mean by this big tent party. We have values and goals that unite our party, and we have different ideas on how to get there. And that's okay. That's what makes us different than the Republicans, and that's what makes us able to bring many more people into this coalition and as a result win, right? You never win by pushing people out. You only win by bringing people in. You said this last night. You said addition, not subtraction. Yes. And I think that also feels good as a person, right? To want to talk to neighbors, bring them in, work with them. So it feels good to say that too, which I think is nice. Last night, young voters, independent voters swung to Democrats. That was a trend that we saw across Virginia and New Jersey.
What do you think happened there? And also, I will mention key demographics. Mikey Sherrill, Abigail Spanberger won and performed really well with. What happened last night with these voters, and how do we continue to reach out to these people and make sure that we're not leaving them behind?
Yeah, I mean, I think let me just answer that piece first, which is we have to deliver, right? Now they put their faith in us. They clearly have swung back our way. And now they're relying on us because for many people, especially young people, right, there's no appeal to party or candidates. What they're voting on is their hopes and their dreams, their aspirations, and now it's on us to actually stand up and deliver for them, and we will. But as it relates to what we saw last night, which was really tremendous, we didn't just win with young people, right? There was a significant swing amongst young people. 2-1 for Abigail Spanberger, 2-1 for Mikey Sherrill, 75% of young people in New York City, so 3/4 of young people voted for Zoran Mamdani, right? That's a huge swing, but surprisingly for some, not for me, young men swung back our way as well. We won with young men in Virginia. We won with young men in New Jersey. We won with young men in New York City. So what that suggests to me, of course, is all of these gains that Donald Trump made in 2024 were very elastic, and they're swinging back our way. You mentioned independent voters. We have been overperforming with independent voters all year long, and last night was no different. We won big last night, and that was, not just a result of Democratic voters, but independent voters who left us last year, who are now, again, they're rejecting Donald Trump, the extremism, the MAGA agenda, and they're embracing our agenda, which is much more hopeful and gives them a sense that their better days are tied to Democrats' success, and their better days in terms of their own economic success lies with Democrats in control.
You mentioned you weren't surprised about young men swinging back. Why? I'm curious.
Because I think young men in particular I've seen it, I've listened to it in these podcasts and in these other spaces, right? They're frustrated, they're still frustrated, and they believe that Donald Trump lied to them, and they're taking it personally, right? Because they believed in him so much. And so that swing that started right away from the very beginning of this administration because Donald Trump has shown no interest in helping young people actually climb the economic ladder. Young people and young men in particular are so anxious about their futures and their opportunities, and Donald Trump has left them out of the conversation. He's left them out of their calculus. Unless you're a rich billionaire, right, and a wealthy and connected person, he doesn't care about you. And I think that's what we're seeing. So, and I know for sure that's what young men are seeing right now, right? That this guy's a fraud. And so with not just the young men, but young people, and generally, they're swinging back our way. Women are swinging back our way. Independent voters swinging back our way. Latino voters have swung almost completely our way right now. Now it's up to us, to your point, to actually keep them and keep them part of our coalition. And the way we do that is by delivering for them.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the great campaigns, the message that Democrats ran on, and I think that is what we're taking from last night. But there's also the Donald Trump of it all. And you mentioned Donald Trump disappointing a lot of these coalitions who trusted him because he said that he would lower costs.
Right.
He hasn't. He's tearing down his ballroom or tearing down the East Wing to create his ballroom.
Right. And don't forget the marble fixtures in his bathroom
Right.
and the Great Gatsby party and all of the sort of extravagant, really over the top activity by this guy, which basically reinforces the point we were trying to make. Right?
He doesn't make it hard for us.
Right, because he's his own worst enemy. We've been saying for some time now, for years, that the only person Donald Trump cares about is himself and his rich billionaire buddies. And everything he's done this year, through his own hands, he proves the point.
Yeah.
I mean, he's thrown a big, giant, Great Gatsby party, which probably cost him millions of dollars, extravagant party for his billionaire friends, while 42 million Americans are being kicked off of nutrition programs. As federal employees are laid off, wondering how the hell they're going to be able to afford their rent or their car payment, right, or put food on the table, he's throwing big parties. He's tearing down the East Wing of the White House to build a ballroom for himself. He is, putting marble fixtures in bathrooms. This is Donald Trump. So make no mistake about it, I'm not surprised by any of it, because working people, and I come from a working class background, they look at that and they say, are you kidding me? This is you, Donald Trump? I thought you were going to help us. So we actually have an opportunity here if we're willing to take advantage of it. And that opportunity is to have conversations with people who left us. People like my father-in-law, who's a farmer, right? Rural economies are being decimated right now because of these tariffs, right? Farmers are, going out of business at a record rate. The farm, foreclosures is the highest it's been in, close to 40 years. The number of farm suicides is at farmer suicide is at an all-time high. So I say this because this is an opportunity for us to really engage people who haven't believed in the Democratic Party in some time. But we have to take advantage of it. We've got to get out there and have conversations. That's why, by the way, Hannah, we invested earlier than any party committee, earlier than anyone else doing this work in organizing, right? We're the only committee that this spring and summer started our direct voter contact programs, having conversations with voters on the ground, actually developing relationships of trust around shared values, as I mentioned, and around their hopes and dreams. If we continue that work, because we saw it work last night, if we continue that work, we're going to have a big night in 362 days.
Not that you're counting.
Oh, I'm counting.
The 150 town halls the DNC worked with this summer,
right.
too. That was that organizing where you're starting those conversations. Donald Trump posted last night that the reason why Democrats won so well was because he was not on the ballot and the government shut down. In a funny way, that's almost admitting that the government shut down. The Republicans are to blame for the government shutdown.
That's right.
What do you think about those 2 points from him?
Well, I think it's funny because Donald Trump will never, ever accept responsibility for anything, right? And there's no doubt that the blame for last night's election losses for Republicans lies squarely at the feet of the most unpopular politician ever, right? Our president ever. He's at 37% approval. His big ugly bill that he passed is the least popular piece of legislation in over half a century. People are suffering amazingly in this country, and he has done nothing again to help them. And so, the reality is what last night was about, as much as it was about our positive agenda that we put forward and these amazing candidates who reflected hope and optimism for the future, it was also a rejection of Donald Trump. It was a rejection of his extremism. It was a rejection of him shredding the Constitution in front of our eyes. It was a rejection of him and his callous, depraved, morality, where he's throwing seniors out of nursing homes and children off of food. So there's one person in this country who deserves the blame for this, and it's Donald Trump. Of course, he'll accept no responsibility. He'll try to pin it on everything else. But, if this trend continues, which I expect it to, because there's no self-awareness by this guy, he'll look to point fingers to everyone. If this trend continues, he will have 2 chambers that will be in Democratic hands next year, and then we're really going to come after him. Look, we will put a check in his power next year when we win back the House. But if we win back the Senate, which he's creating the environment for us to do, we're going to come after him right away. And so be careful, Donald Trump. You might want to look yourself in the mirror on what's happening with the Republican Party, and it's all as a result of you.
There was a poll yesterday before the election results came out that said that Democratic momentum is higher than Republican momentum for the midterms.
Yes.
You just mentioned the midterms, and this stat that I saw caught my eye, which is that over the past 90 years, every time Democrats have won the New York City mayoral race and the governor's mansions in New Jersey and Virginia, they have gone on to win the House of Representatives. How do you feel about our chances to win next year?
Well, I'm certainly optimistic, and as I said yesterday, I'm confident but not complacent, meaning that, certainly the wind at our backs, and even greater than it was before yesterday. There was a lot of momentum for us this year, right? We overperformed on average in 45 key races on the ballot to the tune of about 16 percentage points, which is a historic overperformance. We've never seen that type of overperformance in an off-year election. That gave us a lot of momentum going into these elections yesterday. But the reality for us right now is we can't be complacent. We can't rest on our laurels. We can't believe the polls. We have to go out and work for it, right? And that's another reason I was successful in Minnesota. We just drowned out all that stuff. We always ran like we were 20 points behind, even if we were 20 points ahead. And I know this team at the DNC, which I'm so proud of, is just going to keep grinding. We're not going to be satisfied until November of 2028 when we finally end this extremism that we see in this country. So,
DNC Chair Ken Martin, it's been a pleasure to work with you and see your hustle. You set the tone for us here. And it was an honor to let me grill you today. We flipped the script a little bit here, so this was fun for me.
Listen, have me on and ask me tougher questions. Boy, those are some softballs.
I know. We're in a basketball fantasy league together, so.
I know, and I'm not doing so well. I haven't had time to actually focus on that, but that's all right.
That's fine. The season just started. I have many of your Timberwolves on my team.
Oh, good
and they're
for
really
you.
delivering on their numbers.
There
so
you
thank
go.
You so much.
Good for you. Well, Hannah, thanks for all you do. Keep it up.
Thanks, Kim.
Yep.